Hey, good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to see you. And it's a gorgeous day today, too. I'm so grateful to have the sun shining out again in my woods, because it's been a very rainy summer so far. So anyways, thanks for being here, and I'm really glad you're here. I'm Rita Hickman, body mind expert, shiatsu massage therapist, and I help women who are in toxic relationships figure out how to cope, how to get their head back in their game, their heart back turned on, how to live their life, move forward, heal, all the jazz. And I work on it from an Asian medicine perspective. It's pretty cool stuff. So today we're going to be talking about, it's kind of like, it's a progression of things. And it started because when I was a kid, I dealt with depression. Well, almost every summer, absolutely. The rest of the time, with school and things like that, I was pretty busy, so I was distracted from it. I didn't have a choice to feel, I didn't recognize I was feeling depressed. But when people are in a narcissistic relationship, one of the things that's overlooked is the depression. We're so grateful to have, when we're not in a place of anxiety, that we don't recognize that depression is the natural consequence of that too. It comes when we're exhausted. It comes when our resources are gone, when we're burnt out, when we don't have good self-care things in place. Narcissism, being in a relationship with a narcissist is something that is absolutely designed to create depression in somebody. So first of all, I want you to recognize that it's normal. I'm going to move this a little bit. There we go, much better. That it's normal to feel depressed about this stuff. It's there we go. There we go. Perfect. So it's normal to feel depressed stuff. Because it's the natural consequence when physically, mentally, and emotionally things get really run down and worn out. So first of all, recognize it. And one of the things that they talk about is in your healing journey is things like gratitude. And I used to really shy away from words like that because, they'd always say, well, when you feel gratitude, you need to feel it in your heart. You need to, not just think the words. You need to, not just say them blindly, but feel them, almost like going to church. And one of the things that a lot of people miss when someone is in depression is that even when you're saying the words of gratitude, you don't feel it. It's hard to feel because you're burnt out, because you're depressed, because you've got no resources left, because the anxiety and the frustration has taken everything that you've got. So what they miss is that gratitude and mantras really need to start, we need to be gentle with ourselves when we do them. So it starts with just being grateful. You don't even have to feel it. You just have to think it. That's it. You just have to start changing your thoughts to, I'm so glad there's grass. I'm so glad the sun shines. I'm glad for the color blue. I'm grateful that trees exist. I'm grateful the color white exists. I'm grateful that white next to red is so pretty. I'm grateful that there are birds that sing and chirp. We start by noticing and paying attention to the things that can bring us joy, can bring us light and life, even if we don't feel it. So one of my favorite philosophers, his name was Alan Watts, and I'm sure he was some horrible, horrible person, but he had a lot of fun. And he'd call himself a spiritual entertainer, and he was actually a really good philosopher who focused on Asian medicine and Asian medicine philosophies and Taoism and Confucianism and things like that. And one of the phrases he would say is, love anything. Because whatever you start to love or whatever you start to think will grow. And this is the same thing with gratitude. You start with just by saying the words in your head, and it can take a bit of time. You know, it's not, this stuff isn't automatic. So you can spend a whole morning, you know, in your head constantly saying things like, I'm so glad that there's dew. I'm glad that chipmunks are here, that bluebirds hang out in my yard. I'm grateful for butterflies. I'm grateful for leaves. I'm grateful that I have hot water and a warm house. You know, it starts with thinking those things. And when we start to think those things, this is what happens. We start to rewire our body. Our nervous system. We start to rewire our brain. And so it's in the middle of the jungle out of your depression. Because when you're in depression, it's like you're in a jungle. You're surrounded, there's no path, you were dropped in the middle of it. You know, maybe it's like that show Naked and Afraid. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I have not watched it. It looks like it'll totally freak me out. But you're dropped in the middle of nowhere, you know, and that's what depression feels like. And you're surrounded by snakes and coyotes and vines and, you know, mosquitoes and bugs, and it's miserable, and you're anxious, and depression looks like sadness. Depression is with a whole host of other experiences. You might not have realized if you grew up with narcissism in your family that you probably also grew up with depression. And until we start to address that depression and love it instead of just push it away because it's an illness or because it's a symptom or something like that, and we ignore the fact that it's depression, then we're never able to help heal it through the gratitude, because that's what gratitude does. You know, the technology, let's say, of healing, the cornerstone of healing is love and compassion. That's the cornerstone. And the more love and compassion that you are able to develop in yourself, for yourself, the more gratitude that you can develop for yourself, the happier you're going to feel. So it starts with, you know, just anything simple, anything at all. And when you start making this a practice for yourself, a gratitude practice, and it doesn't have to be elaborate, you don't even have to feel it. You can just say the words. Because when you say the words, it starts to rewire your brain. And when you say the words, it talks differently to your heart. And it starts to tell your heart, we want to feel grateful. We don't want to feel so sad and angry and anxious and frustrated. We want to feel joyful for the life that we have, for what exists, for what's, you know, not necessarily the narcissism, finding things that we can be grateful for, things that are miraculous. I'm grateful I can do these live streams every day, you know, and connect with such amazing women that we can finally reach across the world and have this healing movement. I'm so grateful for that. So be gentle with yourself. Realize that you are in the middle, naked and afraid, in the middle of a jungle with snakes and maybe a machete, and your machete is gratitude. And when you start with a little bit here and take a rest and a little bit there, it makes that change. It creates that pathway out of that depression and out of that anxiety. So today your homework assignment is to spend some time, even if it's just saying the words and noticing, being grateful for things. You know, one of the practices I picked up, I went to Colombia, the country. I studied with the... Okay, we're going to try to finish this live stream today. I guess it's telling me to finish up because it keeps giving me technical glitches. So, okay, to wrap up, I was in Colombia with the indigenous people, and they taught me about connecting things back for years. They talked to me about thinking about how things are interconnected all the way back, the lineage of it. So if you eat a piece of chocolate, you think about where the cocoa beans came from and the sunlight that shined, you know, on those plants, and the people who harvested them, and the life that they lived, and where the seed for the tree came from, you know, in the first place, where how it was processed and roasted the sun, or in other ways. You think about the lineage, and when you think about the lineage like that, it starts to help you feel connected connected to everything that exists, connected to the land, connected to yourself. And it's the pathway out of that depression. It's the pathway out of that anxiety, is starting to retrain your brain and retrain your nervous system so that and happen. Okay? So, since I keep glitching up, I'll say goodbye for now. Happy Friday. Have a happy weekend. And start thinking about gratitude. And if you haven't joined the Healthy Mindsets to Cope with Narcissists, look for it on Facebook and join. And if you've already joined, ask a friend, because it's this community of thinking and healing that moves us all forward. Okay? So, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.